Badlands. Run into Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Devolution Recap Series. This is a series where we're going back through the original Devolution series as read by Patrick Gunnels, and I am providing basically updated commentary on my thoughts now, because I made kind of a deal with myself that I would never go back and make any changes to the original series. So there's going to be some things I'm wrong about, some things my thoughts has changed on. I just wanted it all to be written as it was. And yeah, so very excited about this. This is going to be an interesting one for a couple of reasons. Number one, we're doing Addendum Part 2, which is about the COGCON level change that took place on January 19th of 2021, right before Trump left office. Why would that happen? And then also, I was looking at the video of this, and I'm in the video with Patrick, and I think at the end of it, I answer questions or something, so we might listen to a little bit of that. That could be fun. Normally after these, I would do a locals Q&A. I didn't do one last time. I'm not going to do one this time, but I probably will do one on Thursday. So Thursday, going to be doing, I think, part 10 of the series at about the same time, about 1 Eastern. But yeah, so also tonight, guys, don't miss our coverage of the debate between Kamala and Trump. Our coverage is going to start at about 8:30 Eastern, so make sure you guys tune in for that. Before we dig into this, I just want to give a quick shout out to the two sponsors of our show right now. And first up, we have Strategic Business Advisors.
Are you a business owner who's overworked, frustrated with your employees, and seem to just be spinning your wheels? Probably not what you signed up for. Starting a business is very different than managing and scaling a business. You have the ability to make your business work for you rather than the other way around. I can help you in your business with a unique 3-step process to scale your business to the next level. Here's my client, Domenico Ponti.
I met a gentleman by the name of Kerry Bergen. I was looking for a fractional CFO. What I got is much more than that. I got a person who lets me vent and listen. He's allowed us to build structure, gave us courage because of his contributions. His ability to correct and find mistake was a wow for me. What takes Carrie 5 takes me 30 or maybe more.
Book a meeting with me, discuss your goals and situation. Let's start fast tracking your next level of success.
Thank you, Kerry, for being one of the sponsors of today's show. He has been to a GART. He's been in most of our chats. He's a great guy. Be sure to support those who support this show. And speaking of that, we got another sponsor here, and this is a returning sponsor. Great book here, guys. Our sponsor, City Zoo, An Unfairy Story by Jeff Pedigo. He is Captain Seth Keshel's reclusive map guy. So if you know Seth Keshel, the maps, that's Jeff Pedigo here. City Zoo is an allegorical fable like George Orwell's Animal Farm, but instead of being a fable about the Russian Revolution, it's an allegory about the color revolution now underway in the United States. But City Zoo is less about politics than it is about the unique culture of the U.S. and the way our monkey see, monkey do news media has completely subverted it. Now the media has been weaponized against us. City Zoo presents an animalized history of the United States and its unique culture of curiosity, discovery, tolerance, and triumph. Early readers say City Zoo is clever, funny, and rich with subtext and symbolism. Some have said it should be taught in schools. And I actually got a passage here from the book. I just want to read this because I'm on page 53 now. Been reading a little bit. And this is the start of the next chapter. Tell me if this sounds familiar. On Tuesday morning, the media reported that overpopulation would soon become a crisis if the animals kept bearing young. In order for life in the City Zoo to continue, they said everyone must stop procreating. And it goes on to talk about another animal who scheduled an announcement and totally, like, everybody stopped talking about the overpopulation from the media. It's a fascinating book, guys. I encourage you to get this if you haven't yet. And actually, the hardcover has sold out on Amazon. So there's more on the way. But in the meantime, the ebook is only $10. So you could buy the ebook, decide to read it later, whatever, get the hardcover later. But this is a way you can support those in our community. You can support content from people that isn't like mainstream content. And you can support Badlands Media in the process. I highly encourage you to get City Zoo, guys. It's a great book. Thank you, Jeff. It's awesome. All right, without further ado, we're going to get right into addendum number 2, and we'll see how this goes. I'm wondering if I'm going to be interrupting Patrick during the stream that I'm on with him here, or if I'm just at the end. So I'll be just as surprised as you guys. I don't remember going on air with him for this.
Devolution Addendum Series, Part 2, from Patel Patriots Devolution Series. COGCON 2. As I have said before, the beauty of devolution catching on is that there are so many intelligent people contributing to further solidify the theory. Quinn, one of my admins on the Telegram channel, Patel Patriot Chat, shared a thread from Twitter that a member had posted. The thread is more than intriguing. Special note, there appear to be a few references to quote-unquote Q drops in this thread. Just a reminder, I haven't ever read into the Q drops, so I won't have any comment on those particular tweets. I'm going to break this thread down tweet by tweet and try to provide context and clarity. The first and most important...
Real quick, guys, I'm going to speed this up a little bit. And so if it's unbearable to listen to, just let me know. But again, this is fascinating because this goes through the COGCON levels, and I break it down in this reading. But this was changed. I think earlier I said January 19th. It was January 18th it appears. But we're gonna discuss how that makes any sense for that to happen. And maybe there was some logical explanations, but it's a fascinating topic.
Important thing to keep in mind as we go through this thread is that it was written on January 18th, 2021, 2 days before Joe Biden's quote-unquote inauguration. Safe place for rational thinking at ASPFRT on Twitter. January 18th, 2021, is President Trump setting up a shadow government. What is COGCON Level 2? The president...
Keep in mind, guys, this thread was written at the time. So like January 18th of 2021, the first tweet is talking about him Trump setting up a shadow government. This was really before, well before I started my series. I don't remember if Thomas Wichter was talking about devolution at this time yet. I'm trying to think back. I don't remember for sure. But I didn't start writing my series until June, July of 2021, so a few months after this. So he's already talking about the shadow government and Trump not really fully walking away in this Twitter thread, like before Trump actually walked away and Biden was inaugurated. That's one of the reasons this is so fascinating.
Has unique powers during a national emergency. The United States is still under a state of national emergency pursuant to Executive Order 13848 from September 2018. Back to Patel. Remember what we've already covered regarding Executive Order 13848 from Devolution Part 7. Here are the primary recaps. No later than 45 days after the conclusion of the United States election, the Director of National Intelligence, along with others, is to conduct an assessment of any information showing foreign interference in our elections. One of the members receiving this assessment is the Secretary of Defense. Within 45 days of receiving that assessment, the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security are to make a report evaluating how badly the foreign interference affected the security and integrity of our election infrastructure, counting of votes, transmission of results, and if the foreign interference targeted election infrastructure relating to specific campaigns or candidates and how it could have affected that campaign's information or data. One of the members receiving that report is the Secretary of Defense. The report is to include recommendations, if appropriate, regarding remedial actions to be taken by the U.S. government other than the sanctions. This means that, at any time, the head of any agency or any other appropriate official may tender to the president any analysis, information, assessment, or evaluation of foreign interference in a U.S. election. This also means that if an appropriate official has any information that indicates foreign interference in a U.S. election, they can submit that information to the president in an independent report. This is a bombshell. Hypothetically speaking, if our military were to come across any information showing foreign interference in a U.S. election, they could report it directly to the president in an independent report and do so at any time. They could completely bypass the heads of every other agency, and they don't have to stick to the 45-day by 45-day timeline. Tweet number 3 in the thread. On September 10th, 2020, Executive Order 13848 was extended for 1 year due to the unusual and extraordinary threat to national security. September 10th, 2020, extended for 1 year. Executive Order 13848 was indeed extended for 1 year. The original executive order was issued on September 12th, 2018, and was effective until September 12th, 2020. The 1 year continuation is effective from September 12th, 2020 through September 12th, 2021. From the notice of the continuation, quote, although there has been no evidence of a foreign power altering the outcomes or vote tabulation in any United States election, foreign powers have historically sought to exploit America's free and open political system. In recent years, the proliferation of digital devices and internet-based communications has created significant vulnerabilities and magnified the scope and intensity of the threat of foreign interference. The ability of persons located in whole or in substantial part outside the United States to interfere in or undermine public confidence in United States elections, including through the unauthorized accessing of election and campaign infrastructure or the covert distribution of propaganda and disinformation, continues to pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. For this reason, the national emergency declared on September 12th, 2018 must continue in effect beyond September 12th, 2020. Therefore, in accordance with Section 202D of the National Emergencies Act, 50 United States Code 1622, I am continuing for 1 year the national emergency declared in Executive Order 13848 with respect to the threat of foreign interference in or undermining public confidence in United States elections.
All right, so this is very timely because that was the second time Trump had continued that original executive order. So he did it in 2019. He did it again in 2020. And then as of yesterday, Joe Biden has now continued the same executive order 4 times. He just did the 4th one yesterday. Every other time he did it on the 7th, September 7th each year. This time 7th fell on a Saturday, so he did it on Monday yesterday. But it's fascinating stuff. And the way Joe Biden did it, I'll show you this here. This is the same language that Trump used. Not that that's a huge deal, but it is interesting. They all say, although there's been no evidence of foreign powers altering the outcomes of or vote tabulation in any election, we still have this national emergency that has to do with it. And this Twitter thread that we're going through in this article is accurate that national emergencies do grant presidents, a certain set of powers they wouldn't have otherwise. And this is a tactic or a move that's been utilized by pretty much every president for a long time. There's a lot of national emergencies that are still in effect, not just for EO 13848, but there's like 40 or 50 or something. I don't even remember the total, but there's quite a few. But he's on to something here, so we're going to keep going.
Tweet number 4 from ASPFRT, January 18th, 2021. Quote, during a catastrophic national emergency, the president may establish a temporary shadow government. Part of establishing the shadow government requires key individuals in the ERG, Emergency Relocation Group, moving to secondary locations to run the government. The shadow government following a catastrophic national emergency. Back to Patel. Note, this article.
So I don't know if I get into it here, but this is accurate. It's not really called shadow government. This is what continuity of government is. So I don't know where this person got their source for this thing, but the emergency relocation groups, those are like devolution sites. And shadow government, continuity government is kind of the same thing as what he's hinting at here.
From the Washington Post, dated March 1st, 2002, titled Shadow Government is at Work in Secret. Washington Post. President Bush has dispatched a shadow government of about 100 senior civilian managers to live and work secretly outside Washington, activating for the first time long-standing plans to ensure survival of federal rule after catastrophic attack on the nation's capital. Execution of the classified continuity of operations plan resulted not from the Cold War threat of intercontinental missiles, the scenario rehearsed for decades, but from heightened fears that the al-Qaeda terrorist network might somehow obtain a portable nuclear weapon, according to 3 officials with first-hand knowledge. U.S. intelligence has no specific knowledge of the weapon, they said, but the risk is thought to be great enough to justify the shadow government's disruption and expense. deployed on the fly. In the first hours of turmoil on September 11th, one participant said the shadow government has evolved into an indefinite precaution. For that reason, the high-ranking officials representing their departments have begun rotating in and out of the assignment at one of two fortified locations along the East Coast. Rotation is among several changes made in late October to early November, sources said, to the standing directive Bush inherited from a line of presidents reaching back to Dwight D. Eisenhower. The civilian cadre present in the bunkers usually numbers 70 to 150 and fluctuates based on intelligence about terrorist threats, according to a senior official involved in managing the program. It draws from every cabinet department and some independent agencies. Its first mission, in the event of a disabling blow to Washington, would be to prevent collapse of essential government functions. Assuming command of regional federal offices, officials said the underground government would try to contain disruptions of the nation's food and water supplies, transportation links, energy and telecommunications networks, public health, and civil order. Later, it would begin to reconstitute the government. Back to Patel. This article above is from 2002. Thanks to John from Spitballers for sharing. Discusses a shadow government and how it has evolved into an indefinite precaution. The mission of this shadow government is to prevent the collapse of essential government functions.
Yeah, so fascinating. And we do know for a fact that after 9/11, some sort of continuity government was implemented. And then, when Bush made it to a safe spot and, he took back over power, but then they kept this alternate shadow government, they're calling it, in place as a precaution in case something like this were to ever happen again. They would have somebody to take over. That's what continuity government is. And so this is really the first time, the idea of continuity government has been around for decades, long time, back to Eisenhower, and maybe probably even further. There's some references back to like even the Revolutionary War of stuff like this. But for the first time, it was really implemented and then continued to be on standby in case something were to happen, and the reason that's important is because that kind of proves that something like this not only exists, but has been used before and is always there in case it needs to be used again, which is okay. So, well, what if the catastrophic attack isn't a nuclear weapon, but instead a stolen election or something like that? Could you theoretically implement it then? That's what the series is about, guys. But let's keep going.
Back to the thread from ASPFRT, January 18th, 2021, tweet 5. If the national emergency is within the capital region, the National Continuity Plan details a strategy for the mass evacuation and relocation of every federal government agency, the White House, and military. And then, quote, buried deep within the 102-page National Continuity Plan is the strategy for the mass evacuation and relocation of every federal government agency, including the White House and the military, in response to an exceptional catastrophic event within the national capital region. Each agency is required to have a detailed continuity of operations plan, COOP, in place. Patel begins. Let's dig a little deeper by discussing the role of essential functions in continuity.
I do want to say I don't know where he was getting this source from. Like, I don't know what continuity plan he's looking at. I know there's a couple random websites out there that have a bunch of information, and I don't know if this is in reference to that. I mean, because there are multiple different kinds of continuity of government. There is one out there where literally every agency has alternate sites, and they break out to there. I don't think that's what we're seeing play out. I think this is much smaller in scale. I don't think it has to do with every agency, because I mean, there's hundreds of executive agencies, right? But I think this is on a much smaller scale because the national essential functions, whatever they decided they needed to maintain and protect, we don't know. But it could be down to just like one thing: don't let us get invaded, or protect the power grid, or whatever. We don't know. But whatever those are, you don't need every single agency involved in that. But we'll keep going here because I think we get into some background, and there's some interesting things I can already see that my thought process has probably changed on. So let's keep going. Okay, so I do want to point something out here. We haven't gotten to part 13 yet. Obviously, we're going to do part 10 Thursday. We'll do 11 and 12 probably next week. And the following week after that, we'll probably get to 13. Part 13 is a huge, it's one of the biggest executive orders that Trump issued, in my opinion, as it relates to devolution. But what I want you guys to notice here is PPD 40 replaced NSPD 51. NSPD 51 and HSPD 20 were Bush 2007. Okay. PPD 40 was Obama. That was his like entire revamp of continuity policy. Okay. It was pretty standard for a while for presidents to kind of create their own and replace a previous continuity of government order or presidential directive. Trump didn't do that. Trump actually left PPD 40 in place. It's still classified, so we don't have full access to it. We don't know exactly what it says. But his executive order 13961 altered it in a few ways. And we'll get to it later, but that is something that I think is important. And I'm not even 100% sure why, but that is notable. And maybe when we get to 13, we can discuss a little more like why, like some of the things that have changed and why I think it's important that he didn't actually just replace it outright. But anyway, we'll keep going here. You guys aren't getting any sound. What happened? Do you guys really not have any sound? Testing. Can somebody let me know if there's sound? You just can't hear any of the video? How is that possible? Okay, I'm going to play the video again. Let me know if you can hear this.
As directed by PPD 40. PPD 40 defines the different types of essential functions. 1. MEFs, minimum essential functions, are the essential functions directly related.
The sound is on the screen share. The sound was on the screen share the whole time. What? I don't get it. Okay, well, I'm going to play the video. It sounds like everything's working, so I'm going to play the video again. Okay. Sorry, everybody. In case we missed something. Oh, shoot, I don't even know. Oh, it's possible I was sharing the wrong screen when I pressed play. But Patrick, so what we missed was this. This section here. And you guys should be following along. Devolution.link, Addendum 2, talking about the changes that Trump made and the agencies that are involved in. These are the agencies here in which the provisions of PPD 40 apply to. And the Department of Defense is what was highlighted. And this is where we're at now.
To accomplishing the organization's mission
bad, guys.
As set forth in statutory or executive order. Generally, MEFs are unique to each organization. PMEFs are those mission essential functions that must be continuously performed to support or implement the uninterrupted performance of NEFs, and NEFs are select functions that are necessary to lead and sustain the nation during a catastrophic emergency and therefore must be supported through COOP, COG, and ECG capabilities. back to Patel. Let's take a closer look at some publicly available information regarding devolution. On July 2nd, 2021, the Army published 2 pamphlets relating to their COOP programs. AR 500-3, U.S. Army Continuity of Operations Program, AR 500-30, U.S. Army Continuity of Operations Program and Planning Procedures. AR 500-30 gives the details of the guidance and procedures outlined in AR 500-3. AR 500-3 prescribes, gives direction and guidance for the procedures outlined in Department of Defense Directive 3020.26. As I have said before, due to the compromised nature of our federal agencies, I believe the nature of devolution we are experiencing is implemented through the Department of Defense, the military, down to the selected Special Operations Forces, who are continuing the operation of the designated Mission Essential Functions, MEFs. Devolution Part 9 outlines my belief that the only others who even know about this plan are the combatant commanders. These AR 500 pamphlets are Army-specific, but give us a good idea what the DoD devolution or shadow government might look like. So continuity of operations, phases and implementation. Phase 1, readiness and preparedness. Event threat is then happens, then phase 2, activation, then phase 3, continuity operations, phase 4, reconstitution back to the original intended form of government. Here we go, guys.
I wonder how Patrick feels about having to read like all the details like this. Because man, I made him read a lot of stuff, and not all of it was maybe necessary. But this is an interesting part too, because there is like these continuity policy handbooks put out by all. You can find them all over the place. I focused on the Army ones, the AR 500-3 and -30, because they're pretty much military directed, and especially at the time of writing this stuff, I was very like, this is a military devolution, and that still may be true. I think my personal thought process on it is it probably likely has expanded some from that, but I'm not saying it expanded in size. I think there's very few people that are in the actual know and need to be in the know of this, but I don't think it's just Department of Defense specific, even though it could be. But I do think there's more. Like there's people outside the DoD, people on the the Devo team. Article 13, when we talk about that FMR committee with all those different agency heads that were on it, that were implementing and executing a continuity government plan, that came after I wrote this article. And so clearly, I mean, it's got to be bigger than just the DoD and the combatant commanders, although I think those are likely the ones that are in the know from them. Still, even though there's been change, I got to imagine, considering that's all you need, that at least most of them are in the know. That's why Chris Miller went around and looked at some of them in the eye to see the soul, all that stuff. We've covered this on Power Hours, but we'll keep going here because this is an important part. This is from the pamphlet talking about how devolution works. Like you have your whatever the phase 1, you're just prepared, you're ready. You have the shadow government waiting. Whatever happens, the event, the threat triggers it. I'll show you the screen. I'll just try to remember to go back. Okay, and could this be stolen election? Could it be COVID? I mean, there's multiple different things. People keep pointing out to me that chart that Trump is talking about, where it has the arrow pointing to April of his last day in office. Now, I personally do not subscribe to that theory because there's a lot of things that were done after that date that I think are more relevant to devolution, but it's still an interesting thing. Whenever the phase happened, we went into the activation phase. I personally think the activation took place sometime between January 6th and January 20th. I don't know when specifically, but I think that was kind of the point of no return. And then phase 3 is you're in continuity of operations. There is no timetable for how long you can be in some sort of continuity of operations or continuity government plan. Like it just says short, mid, and long-term goals or something like that. We might even see the phrasing here shortly. But then once it's all done, you get into the reconstitution. That's getting back to normal or as close to normal as possible. But let's read through this now.
Devolution is the capability to transfer statutory authority and responsibility from an organization's primary operating staff and facilities to another designated staff or subordinate organizations.
Real quick, I see a lot of comments about this. I'm not streaming to locals today because after this is done, I don't have time. But Thursday, I will do a local stream again. So I'll stream it all the locals, and afterwards I'll do the Q&A. So no locals today. Locals on Thursday.
and devolution locations to perform and sustain mission essential functions. A COOP plan, Operation for Devolution, describes how an organization will identify and transfer its organizational command and control, as well as responsibility for performing its mission essential functions to another organization or organizations and personnel at a geographically dispersed location or locations unaffected by the incident. Organizations can activate devolution as a short-term option, while ERG, Emergency Relocation Group members, relocate to their alternate location or locations. Additionally, organizations can choose to partially devolve by transferring responsibilities for select mission essential functions, or devolve to multiple sites by transferring responsibilities for particular MEFs to various sites.
This is the part that I'm glad I highlighted this in the original writing, because that is fascinating. Organizations can choose to partially devolve by transferring responsibilities for select MEFs. This was written before Part 13, where that executive order, all it talks about is reorganizing and reprioritizing the NEFs or the MEFs. So if they chose just a couple things that they needed, you wouldn't see a full governmental devolution. Even though you can see clues of it and hints of it, as we go, you only see it's partially devolved. That's totally what happened here, in my opinion. It was some sort of partial devolution, and there's certain NEFs that are being maintained. And again, we don't know specifically what those are. We can guess all we want, but anyway, I'm glad I highlighted that part.
The organization's devolution counterpart, that is, the gaining organizations and facilities, must have the capability to perform mission essential functions as soon as possible, but not later than 12 hours after devolution plan activation, and must be able to sustain operations for a minimum of 30 days or until normal operations are resumed. When selecting a devolution organization and location, the capabilities of the receiving organization and location must be considered to ensure it has sufficient communications systems, equipment, and resources pre-positioned or available within the accepted time frame to assume responsibility for performing the MEFs devolving to that devolution site. Personnel assigned devolution responsibilities to perform continuity operations at each gaining organization site are referred to as the Devolution Emergency Response Group, DERG, and should have the training and skill sets to conduct the specified mission essential function. The devolving organization and its counterparts must prepare the gaining organization's DERG to conduct continuity operations through the TT&E program. Organizations should also consider the development of support documentation such as training and job aids, standard operating procedures, desk guides, and handbooks. In addition, the organization's co-op O plan will continuity at all levels. Successful response and recovery operations.
This part is important because all the time I get, so by the way, this document itself has the word devolution 41 times in total. So I know every time we see like Trump said devolve recently, and RFK Jr. talks or said something about devolution of America. I know it's different context, but it's still interesting to me that word, whenever it gets used by a big figure. But this document it's in here a lot, and you can learn a lot about devolution and the concept of it by reading this document. Again, you can find it in Devolution Addendum 2 at devolution.link. But this part that I highlighted here, this is an important part, because every time I get the question about, well, if devolution is in place, how come the border, people are coming across the border? Or you can go on, how come so-and-so is happening? How come this happened? How come this happened? This part kind of explains my thought process on why. So when we get to the highlighted part here about it not being operationally or financially possible, I'll discuss a little more.
Require continuity at all levels, from the highest levels of government, continuity of government, to all critical or essential operations, continuity of operations, COOP, to essential services, headquarters and staff functions, tenant organizations, and commercial businesses, business continuity. The reason for the installation's existence is to enable mission execution in support of the national military strategy. The mission essential functions, MEFs, necessary to perform these missions reside in all manner of information, expertise, capabilities, and facilities. It is not operationally or financially possible to sustain all MEFs all of the time in an all hazards environment. However, it is possible to mitigate the potential effects of these hazards to these MEFs through a comprehensive integrated continuity program. The same.
So that right there, it may not be operationally or financially possible to sustain all the MEFs, those are mission essential functions, all of the time in an all hazards environment. With how I think this is playing out, Trump walking away from a stolen election, you're essentially allowing somebody to take over the highest office in the land and take over a certain level of control of certain things. Now, we don't know what specifically they are protecting, and it's got to be something to do with our national security on some levels, and maybe power grid and certain things that are just like, we cannot lose these things without us being defeated by an enemy abroad. You know what I mean? Like, there's certain things that need to be protected and maintained so that China can't invade us and totally wipe us out. I know it's crazy hypothetical, but that's where my mind is on this. And so they mitigate as much as they can. And so, but this is the answer to that question. Why can we not protect the border? It may not be operationally or financially possible for us to maintain the border in whatever environment we have going on right now with a devolved government, a partially devolved, fully, we don't know. Partially is likely, but it's this is from the military's handbook, AR 500-3. This is how they describe it. It's not me making it up.
Applies to all of the headquarters, staff, and business functions that organize and maintain all of the necessary elements of operational readiness and community life on the installation. All of these supporting functions make up the normalcy that the installation is striving to achieve during the recovery phase. The sooner these functions are restored to normal operations, then the sooner the protected populace can return to a semblance of normal daily life after an emergency. This speed to recovery is enabled first and foremost by an aggressive continuity program at every level. Back to Patel. This gives us great insight and answers some of the tougher questions that come up, such as, how could there be so many illegals flooding our country if the military really was in control? We don't know what the specific MEFs are, but as it says above, it is not operationally or financially possible to sustain all MEFs all of the time in an all-hazards environment. It is likely not operationally possible to sustain security at the border. Back to the thread. Remember, January.
I didn't realize I was going to be answering the same question or saying the same thing here later on in the article, but yeah, I see some comments in the chat. Alien S333, why can't Texas close the border? Why can't and haven't other states popped up to help Texas to close the border? I've thought that too, and I think they could if they wanted to. I know the Biden administration fights them quite a bit on some of this stuff. But another thought to think about, how much of the border has been a red pill? Because I think a big portion of why Trump had to walk away was to basically win over the population and expose the left and the establishment and everything. And the border situation has done quite a bit of that. Like, it's exposed a lot of what's going on, in our country. And I think that can be a good thing. It's a double-edged sword. But there is, oh man, somebody needs to remind me on Wednesday. Let me write this down. On my notebook. My notebook's in my backpack, but I'll write it on this paper. On Wednesday's Power Hour, the other day when I was digging, I came across something from Trump's time in office having to do with the border and potentially tracking illegal immigrants that nobody's really talked about. And so I think I'll try to remember to discuss that on Wednesday. Let's jot that down. I'm going to press play here.
January 18th, 2021, tweet 6. President Trump also has 2 Obama-era executive orders that he might wield to protect the nation. 1, power to commandeer all domestic resources and recruit citizens. 2, DHS can take control of private communication networks. Executive Order 13603, National Defense Resources Preparedness. I don't believe Executive Order 13603 is relevant to our devolution. While this order would be important for an overt war, I don't think it is necessary for a devolution with small-scale special operations forces manning mission-essential functions. This policy was used by Trump to produce masks and ventilators during COVID. Executive Order 13618, Assignment of National Security and Emergency Preparedness Communications Functions. This executive order seems to be more relevant. It outlines the importance of secure communications used during most critical and time-sensitive missions. The team running the show now would most definitely be using the most secure communications possible. Tweet 7.
Okay, hold on. Before we go on from there, I just want to check something. Okay, yeah, so 2 things. What I said there about, let me pull it up, about these 2 executive orders here. 13603. Well, what I said there was I still partially believe that. I do think it's possible that, you know, certain things and companies specifically may have been commandeered throughout a devolution plan. Like Twitter, for instance, it still doesn't make sense to me that Elon Musk was able to acquire Twitter. Now, if there's an active war going on or a declaration of war from Trump before he left office, and maybe there's a lot more things going on, and that's how he got it. Could it be from something like this, the National Defense Resource Preparedness? Possibly. I think it's more probably in line with Executive Order 13848 or something along those lines. But 13618 here, this one is more interesting because this comes up again later in Part 13, and Trump actually made an amendment to 13618 via Executive Order 13961. So again, 13961, we'll talk about this in a couple weeks. This is one of the most important executive orders there is, having to do with devolution. We'll get into it, but Trump amended 13618 with this executive order. So that is notable and has to do with the secure communications. But just keep that in mind for a couple weeks from now. We'll talk about it again.
The federal government has established 4 COGCON, continuity of government readiness conditions, levels to make sure the government is properly prepared to execute on these plans in the event of an emergency. Level 4, least severe. Level 3, second least. Level 2, second most. Level 1, most severe. COGCON 4. Federal executive branch government employees at their normal work locations maintain alternate facility and conduct periodic continuity readiness exercises. COGCON 3. Federal agencies and departments' advanced relocation teams warm up their alternate sites and capabilities, which include testing, communications, and IT systems. Ensure that alternate facilities are prepared to receive continuity staff, track agency leaders and successors daily. COGCON 2. Deployment of 50 to 75% of emergency relocation group continuity to alternate locations. Establish the ability to conduct operations and prepare to perform their organization's essential functions in the event of a catastrophic emergency. And finally, COGCON 1. Full deployment of designated leadership and continuity staffs to perform the organization's essential functions from alternate facilities, either as a result of or preparation for a catastrophic emergency. COGCON levels, guys. COGCON level 1. Okay, so I've gone over those. Tweet 8, COGCON action matrix. I'll touch on the small print. This is back to Patel. I'll touch on the small print in the tweet above in more detail later, or you can visit the Twitter thread found here if you'd like to look closer yourself. Some significant things to note here is that as you move from COGCON 4 down to COGCON 1, there is a decrease in time to when the continuity plan is fully operational, and there are specific staffing level requirements for each level. COGCON 1 means they have an activated continuity plan. Hypothetically speaking, if our country was set to COGCON 2, it means we are just one step away from activating a continuity plan, and they want the staff to be sufficiently prepared. Here is a breakdown of the levels and their time to operation and staffing level requirements. COGCON 4. Continuity plan is fully operational within 12 hours. No staffing required at alternate facility or facilities. COGCON 3. Continuity plan is fully operational within 8 hours. 4 hours to COGCON 2. No staffing required at alternate facility or facilities unless necessary to meet 8-hour operational requirement. Well,
one thing I want to point out here, again, I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself, and we're going to be referring back to this article, I feel like, quite a bit when we cover Part 13, because I'm just now kind of realizing how much they go together in conjunction. But check this out. In Part 13, there's that strategy document that was released along with Executive Order 13961. And it's talking about, like again, this is a change to PPD 40, talking about how it reduces the reliance on reactive relocation of personnel to alternate locations and emphasizes a more proactive full-time posture of distribution. So this COGCON levels that we're going through right now, this is more reactive. Okay, so when this happens, if we're in COGCON 4, you need to be able to get into position within 4 hours or whatever, 12 hours, 8 hours. I mean, it has all these time things, where Executive Order 13961, which Trump implemented December 7th, that's more of like, okay, we're just always ready to go, right? It's more proactive versus reactive.
COGCON 2. Continuity plan is fully operational within 4 hours. 4 hours to COGCON 1. Deploy significant staff to alternate operating facility or facilities to allow activation within 4 hours notice. COGCON 1. Agency HQ continuity plan activated immediately and report operational status within 2 hours. Deploy sufficient staffing to alternate operating facility or facilities to perform essential functions with no notice. Tweet number 9, remember, January 18th, 2021. Interestingly, each year, the United States government secretly drops the COGCON level from level 4 to level 3 due to the concentration of government leadership in a single location. And this is for the State of the Union address. Every year, U.S. federal agencies quietly prepare for the change in the continuity of government condition, COGCON, level during the annual State of the Union address. Because the full presidential line of succession is in attendance at this NSSE event, except for a designated survivor cabinet secretary hiding out in the White House bunker, the COGCON level for the United States government secretly drops from level 4 to level 3 in preparation for the president's State of the Union address to our nation. When an event is designated by the Secretary of Homeland Security as a National Special Security Event, NSSE, the Secret Service assumes its mandated role as the lead agency for the design and implementation of the operational security plan. The Secret Service has developed a core strategy to carry out its security operations, which relies heavily on its established partnerships with law enforcement and public safety officials at the local, state, and federal levels.
So keep that in mind that the State of the Union address. Have any of you guys ever seen Designated Survivor, that series? I actually watched it after I started writing my series because, like, this is interesting. This kind of goes hand in hand. They put a guy, and one of the cabinet members in a room away from the State of the Union in case there's a catastrophic event. That person basically becomes president. That is like secretly changing the level down to COGCON 3. Somebody's ready at an alternate site just in case. Now, this is the thing that happens. And as we're about to go through, something similar happened on January 18th. And this is where it gets really interesting.
The next few tweets will not have any commentary. Here we go. Tweet 10. This is where things get interesting. Dave Troy is a serious chap. Definitely not a Trump supporter. Here he is, Dave Troy, co-curator, host of TEDx Mid-Atlantic, network analyst, disinformation specialist, speaker.
Oh, God. Disinformation analyst. Tell me you're a douchebag without telling me you're a douchebag, right?
Tweet 11. This morning, Dave began posting that many people have been notified that the United States COGCON was lowered to level 2. Dave has been pressing media and government for confirmation or denial. Tweet from Dave Troy. ATHOC, your system was used this morning to send out alerts suggesting the U.S. is at COGCON level 2. Was your system hacked? Care to comment? Next, tweet 12. Dave Troy tweets. For those reading, this is what COGCON level 2 means. Note, we cannot confirm whether this message has any validity at all, or if BlackBerry or Ad Hoc were hacked. We need a statement from them to verify. So either 1, the current US COGCON level was set to 2, and it hasn't been reported by anyone, or 2, the BlackBerry/Ad Hoc system was hacked and used to send messages to at least some civilian targets as part of a disinfo campaign? Which is it? Tweet 14. The United States government uses a variety of systems to make these notifications, including Ad Hoc software from BlackBerry. Ad Hoc is BlackBerry Ad Hoc. Organizations around the world use BlackBerry Ad Hoc software to communicate and collaborate in times of crisis. Tweet 15. Dave Troy identified the telephone number used to communicate the Ad Hoc messages. This number is actually detailed as an emergency contact number in the Coast Guard emergency response materials. See source at the end of the thread. From Dave Troy. People received phone calls from 703-857-7155, which is tied to your system. Here is a text version some people received. Did Ad Hoc suffer a hack? Tweet 16. Many people provided Troy copies of text messages. Many others are posted to social media and emails notifying government members that COGCON was lowered to level 2. Galen tweeted, here's the screenshot I took. And here they are. COGCON 2, the White House has set continuity of government conditions to 2. No action is required by you at this time. As an emergency relocation group member, you are reminded that should an order for continuity of operations occur, you must report to the alternate operating facility within 4 hours. 1, acknowledge. 2, acknowledge not capable of reporting within the desired time frame. 3, acknowledge not capable of report the alternate operating facility. Here's how to respond. Click this link. Wow. Tweet 17. And then
you guys understand what's happening here, right? On January 18th, 2021, 2 days before Biden was to be inaugurated, the level got changed, or at least the alert got sent out to thousands of employees that there was a change to the COGCON level, and it was lowered to 2, which is the second most serious. Like, I believe it's part, if you get down to COGCON 1, let me see what that says again. COGCON 1 is full deployment of designated leadership and continuity staffs to perform the organization's essential functions from alternate facilities, either as a result of or in preparation for a catastrophic emergency. That's like you're basically running devolution at that point. So why did this go out on January 18th?
Link to the voice message of the alert. Note that this voice message has expired. Tweet 18. Note the scarcity of interest in COGCON until this morning. Note the locations doing the searching: Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, and Texas. Interest over time. Whoops. Hang on. Bam. Interest over time. Interest by region. Interest by subregion. So you have Florida. You have Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Indiana, freaking Illinois, and Texas. If you do a Google search of January 18 COGCON alert, you will find plenty of supporting evidence that this alert did happen. There isn't any mainstream media coverage of it, but there are multiple different people posting about it, and the above Google trend analysis backs it up. Tweet 19. So, what does COGCON level 2 mean? It means 50 to 75% of emergency relocation group moved to alternate locations for our response time. Tweet 20. Some might recall the fire and evacuation this morning, January 18th, 2021, and might think that was the event triggering COGCON 2. The fire was reported at 9:50 a.m., and the COGCON 2 notifications were sent around 8:04 a.m. A tweet from the U.S. Secret Service. Public safety and law enforcement responded to a small fire in the area of 1st and F Streets, Southeast Washington, D.C., that has been extinguished. Out of an abundance of caution, the U.S. Capitol complex was temporarily shut down. There is no threat to the public. Tweet 21. It seems that we are now at COGCON 2. Whether this is an error activated for another reason or the primer for a temporary shadow government will become clear shortly. 22. White House information of continuity of government plans and more info on COGCON levels and procedures. whitehouse.gov, link in the thread. White House continuity of government plan and national co-op exercise, continuity of operations. I just wanted to share the link. I have not personally confirmed the veracity of the information on the site. Tweet number 23, Coast Guard reporting info. All of these from January 18th, 2021. Source, confirming source of COGCON text messages. This confirms that the phone number the alerts were sent from is affiliated with an official notification system used by at least the U.S. Coast Guard. Tweet number 24, tweets from Dave Troy. Ad hoc, your system was used this morning to send out alerts suggesting the U.S. is at COGCON level 2. Was your system hacked? Care to comment? And then Dave Troy Twitter thread, guys. Now, tweet 25, same Twitter user, ASPFRT. DEFCON, defense condition, an alternative name for COGCON references. These are not all references to DEFCON. Please add and offer ideas in comments. DEFCON 1 post here. These are Q drops, guys. And Patel will not be commenting on these. But what is the date of this Q drop? Q drop 498, okay? Tweet 26. A moving truck can be seen outside Mar-a-Lago. Almost like they abandoned the swamp. Rudy Giuliani calls it the abandoned city. Thanks for catching this, Iron Belly. There is no step 5, end Q. And that is from November 19th, 2019, just shortly before COVID hit. 29, the Lincoln bust removed from the White House.
That's actually really interesting. There is no step 5. When you think of the COGCON levels, I just want to verify this. I'm going back through my original article. There's only 4 COGCON levels, and then saying there is no step 5. That's kind of interesting, right?
Back to Patel. I don't think this is significant. See the article from CNN Vomit. Items such as the Lincoln sculpture were on loan from the official White House collection and part of a documented process wherein thousands of pieces of art, decorative art, sculpture, china, and silver, and other items are historically preserved. These items are available for the incoming president and first lady to select at the start of a new term, as the Trumps did in 2017. At move out, there is a systematic return of the loaned items to the White House Historical Association, which, along with the chief usher and curator of the White House, collects the collection items. Quote, to all concerned about media photos of items leaving the White House chief usher and the curator have responsibility for managing and accounting for the White House collection in every presidency. They are an exemplary team of career professionals and should have our confidence in carrying out their responsibility. White House Historical Association President Stuart McLaurin said in a statement. Back to Patel. While there are some posts in this Twitter thread that appear to be irrelevant, the circumstantial evidence supporting a COGCON level change has potentially huge implications. Clearly, our government used the alert system, a fact which so far cannot be disputed. What's left to determine is whether this alert was real, a test, exercise, or a mistake. Like I said, I've spent quite a bit of time searching for information about this alert and found no indications that it was a mistake. I've found no official references to the alert at all. No government agency commented that it was done in error or that there was a scheduled exercise. Every 2 years, our government performs what is called a national level exercise. These are held in even numbered years. National level exercise. The national level exercise, NLE, is the nation's...
Real quick, just seeing something from the chat. It was dropped 498. There is no step 5. If they're referring to like COGCON levels, that's fascinating. I got to send that to Stormy Joe. But somebody asking about Patrick Gunnell's Twitch. I don't know if he was booted. He probably was booted. Most of the people in Badlands were booted from Twitch. I actually wasn't. I was still on Twitch. I still every now and then get like one person who sends me like a couple bucks on Twitch. I never got booted, but once everybody else did, I decided to, like, solidarity. You're going to boot all my friends, then I'm going to leave too. So even though I liked how their platform operated, they were just being super dumb. So none of us are on Twitch that I know of.
Cornerstone exercise for validating progress toward achieving the national culture of preparedness required to prepare for and respond to catastrophic events. NLEs are a progressive build of preparedness activities over the 2-year cycle of the National Exercise Program, which culminate in a full-scale exercise. The NLE is an opportunity for all levels of government, the private sector, non-governmental organizations, and community groups to test operational capabilities, evaluate policies and plans, familiarize personnel with roles and responsibilities, and foster meaningful interaction and communication across the nation. Scenarios for the NLE range from natural disasters to man-made attacks and address the specific types of threats and hazards that pose the greatest risk to the nation. Here is the description of the 2020 NLE. From the beginning, National Level Exercise 2020 was designed as a series of preparedness activities, the 2-year cycle to prepare the nation for some of our greatest threats. NLE 2020 focused on cybersecurity and involved a complex, multidimensional attack that reflects the global threat environment. In the scenario, widespread cyber attacks led to significant impacts on critical infrastructure and community lifelines.
Would you consider a hack of a stolen election, a hack of our election infrastructure to steal it for somebody? I mean, that would have significant impact on much of our critical infrastructure. But the reason I'm going through this, I probably didn't need as much detail, but these are even year exercises. And this COGCON alert change was on an odd year. It was 2021. So the point is, why would this have taken place? It couldn't have been from an exercise, but there was no other official comments on any of this stuff.
State and regional play focused in FEMA Region 1, Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Vermont, and FEMA Region 9, California, Arizona, and Nevada. Federal department and agencies focused on participation from their headquarters locations. Back to Patel. I could not find a reference to exercises in January of 2021 anywhere. If you find one, please let me know. I believe this alert, having been sent out, is another piece of circumstantial evidence pointing to devolution. Remember that according to the COGCON levels, there is a requirement of staff to be prepared and ready to operate at alternate locations to prepare for the implementation of continuity of operations plans. Think back to President Trump's final day in office. He left the White House on Marine One shortly after 8 a.m. and headed to Joint Base Andrews for his farewell speech. This took place hours prior to the quote-unquote inauguration of Joe Biden. The only person of significance from his cabinet that was there to see him off was Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. We know that because he is the only one Trump acknowledged in his speech. Where were the rest of his cabinet members? Where was Chris Miller? If we were really at COGCON level 2, were some of these cabinet members at alternate facilities preparing for initiation of the devolution plan? Joe Biden's inauguration was completely different from every prior inauguration. Typically, the outgoing president attends the inauguration and gets a send-off from the new president. You don't need to watch these, but here are the send-offs of the 2 prior presidents. Trump viewed Biden as illegitimate because that is exactly what he is. Add the COGCON alert to the growing list of circumstantial evidence that devolution is happening. The following shows us what it is like to experience a continuity of operations event. Shadow government, concept of operations, a long day in the life at Homeland Security headquarters, August 14th, 2015. I'm ordering our bombers back to failsafe. We might have to go through this thing after all. Yes, Mr. President. The work atmosphere at Department of Homeland Security has a different feel than anything I'd ever experienced before in either my public or private sector work life. This is by the way, just to make sure everybody knows, this is now a Medium piece about continuity of operations, August 14th, 2015. The jobs, both on the front line and the back office, each come with the pressure you might expect when you are in a zero tolerance business of trying to prevent, protect against, mitigate, respond to, and recover from every conceivable threat and hazard, from hurricanes and improvised nuclear device detonations to earthquakes and cyber attacks. We are responsible for leadership, management, oversight, and execution of our duties without mistakes or errors, cognizant that such failures could cost time, money, and lives. Let me tell you about a day in the life of a senior analyst at DHS headquarters when things seemed to go from bad to worse. Before we get started, it's important to know that there is a subset of employees who, in addition to their day job, are also designated as essential personnel. These employees are trained, equipped, prepared, and available to report to work during catastrophic incidents, emergencies, and other events as required. All essential personnel are both cross-trained and vertically trained to be able to perform the functions of their peers and those versions above and below them in an emergency. Each individual certifies that without regard to family or personal safety, they will perform as required under any circumstances. Now, let's return to the story. It all started on a day that was just like any other day. It was 9:42 a.m. I was in a meeting when I received an emergency notification alert indicating that the continuity of government readiness conditions, COGCON, level changed from COGCON 4, or steady state, to COGCON 2, and that preparations should be in place to move to COGCON 1 within 4 hours. At COGCON 1, leadership and staff are dispersed, and designated leadership and continuity staffs are directed to reconvene at alternate facilities, either as a result of or in preparation for a catastrophic emergency. This is done to preserve or enhance the odds that key personnel will survive to continue essential functions. 30 minutes later, the move was made to COGCON 1, and the staff headed out. I took the metro back to my car in the suburbs and drove to the designated alternate facility. After driving through nothing but small towns for some time, I came around the corner to see a fence that was considerably higher than the fence nearby farms used to retain their livestock. Envision something more like Jurassic Park than rural America. I turned through the gate into a drive and headed toward what looked like a barn that seemed to swallow the vehicles that passed into its depth. I skirted around the structure to present my credentials for verification at a checkpoint. I was cleared and parked in a field as helicopters came and went from the incongruent.
This is interesting because this isn't in the actual article that I published. So I don't think we're going to finish the rest of this because I got to get running here anyway. I'm a little late. But yeah, guys, like why? There's one way you could look at this. You could look at what happened on January 18th of 2021 when this COGCON alert went out and say somebody just made a mistake. Like, would it make sense that they might change the COGCON alert level when a new president is being inaugurated? Possibly, probably. That would kind of make sense. But also, like, nobody would comment on it. And it was early. It was 2 days early. And it was down to COGCON level 2. Like, to me, with all the other circumstantial evidence of them implementing and executing some sort of continuity government plan, we'll get to part 13 soon. It's one of my favorite part of the series. Well, one of them. I think my favorite part is probably part 22 or 23. But anyway, there's so much evidence that something's going on. And then this goes out. It's almost like somebody, like, hey, guys, we're switching the level. We're implementing COG right now. But somewhere along the way, like a flip got switched that sent out the notification to everybody when it wasn't supposed to. Or maybe it was supposed to. Maybe this was them leaving a hint. Like, hey, guys, this is what we're doing. Here you go. Here's another piece of evidence for you to know what's going on. I don't know, but it's a very, very interesting aspect to this whole thing. Why did this go out, and why has there been no official explanation as to why it went out? It's interesting stuff, guys. Anyway, tonight, hit that thumbs up, everybody. Appreciate that. Tonight, we will be covering the debate. Don't forget to tune in. We'll be going live at 8:30 Eastern. And Thursday, I'll be doing it again. We'll do part 10, I believe. I think that's the part I'm on. I'm pretty sure it's part 10. So we will see you guys quite often. Also tomorrow. Wait, did I say that right? Tonight, debate coverage. Tomorrow, Devolution Power Hour. Thursday, part 10. Friday, I might be doing an interview and Liberty Den. Saturday, DPH. Gonna be a busy few days. So thanks for tuning in, though. Hit that thumbs up. We'll see you when we see you.